Okay, cool. And you're ready? We're all ready. Here we go. Hey, everybody. How's it going? What is going on? Welcome to Drum Talk TV live on our Facebook page. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dan Shinder with my guest, Kate Delaney, the sports princess. And Kate's coming to us from the Dallas area. I'm in Globe, Arizona, about 100 miles east of Phoenix in the mountains, away from it all. Kate, how are you?
Dan, I'm great. It's really good to be with you today, especially because if you were to look in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have wacky weather, I'm telling you.
Really?
I thought I was getting rid of those heavy coats, but one day I feel like I'm in the North Pole, and the next day I feel like I'm in the Bahamas.
That kind of happened here. 2 weeks ago, we got 10 inches of snow for 4 days, and 4 days later, it was 70, 75 degrees. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us. And folks, you might be wondering, oops, I'm being yelled at because I forgot to put these in. Sorry about the echo, everybody. There we go. You might be wondering, why do we have someone from the sports world on Drum Talk TV? Well, Kate and I met a couple months ago because we're both members of the National Speakers Association. I'm on the board of directors of the Arizona chapter, and Kate was our guest that we brought in to speak to our chapter. We hit it off. I saw some commonalities. In fact, Kate spent 5 years being rejected 550 times trying to enter the sportscaster world. Well, it's a male-dominated industry. What are we going to do with Kate Delaney? Well, someone finally grew a brain, and they gave her a break, and she's done over 16,000 interviews in over 20 years, and she's also a very sought-after business and motivational speaker. So I thought it'd be fun to compare some commonalities between the music world and being a musician and being in a band with the sports world. If you think about it, we're all striving for excellence. We're all striving to make it. Kate's have those challenges. Musicians have those challenges, especially female musicians, especially female drummers. And, of course, athletes have those challenges. And on top of that, there's the team dynamic. There's the common denominator, I believe, between all people who seek and achieve excellence. So I thought this would be fun. But first, I have to do a little prying because I found out that Kate has always had an affinity for drummers, right? When you go to concerts, everyone, like you said, was only the lead singer, and you were into the drummer, right? Ooh, she's got her boat on. She's ready for St. Patrick's Day.
I'm driving my family crazy doing this.
So you mentioned on a post that your favorite drummer's initials are DG. And off the top of my head, and I don't know if it's male or female, but off the top of my head, one name comes to mind, who's a drummer who's been on the show. He's one of my favorite drummers, big inspiration to me. Is it Daniel Glass?
No, it is not.
So unless Danny Glover plays drums and I'm not aware, I'm trying to think who else it could be. Could you give me a hint? Is it a man or a woman?
I can give you a hint. I'm so surprised you didn't know because my husband, who is not a drummer, said that's the easiest thing in the world to get that. So I'm just setting you up for that. So here's the deal. Think Nirvana.
Oh, Dave Grohl.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Wow, I did space on that. Immediately I thought of Daniel Glass. I'm close with him. But that's great. So you've been a Dave Grohl fan since the beginning, or is this
Since the beginning, since Nirvana, and as you know, he's played with other, like a lot of drummers, he's played with other people. He even did a little Bowie stint.
Yeah.
And boy, there's just something about him. I think he is, if I can say it, he's a badass. I just think he's awesome.
Absolutely.
And I was attracted to his movement, what he did right from the get-go, and I followed his career. And of course now, you know, he's got a wonderful singing voice, obviously, and all of that. And sometimes that happens with drummers. I mean, that's a great question for you. Yeah. I mean, don't we have a list of a few drummers who have also gone on to singing careers?
Some guy named, some flash in the pan, I don't know, most people might not have heard of him. His name's Phil Collins.
Yes.
Phil was the most amazing drummer back in the day, and even in the latter days of him playing, but in the early 70s to late 70s with Genesis, even when Peter Gabriel was still the vocalist, his drumming on the very, very first live album was just incredible. There's a video concert out there from the Selling England by the Pound tour where Phil is, I think, 19 or 20 years old. Looks just like his son Simon. Now, I interviewed Simon, and it was weird. It was like interviewing Phil Collins from 35 years prior, 40 years prior, something like that. But yeah, Phil is probably the best example I can think of. Levon Helm, the late, great Levon Helm from the band. Dean Castronovo, who was with Journey for a while, and he's doing a tour with Neil Schon of Journey right now. Dean can sound just like Steve Perry of Journey.
Wow.
It's unreal. So those are a few that come to my mind. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Genesis because my first concert was a Genesis concert. I had to beg my mother to go because I think I was.
Wait, don't say how old you were because I want to ask what year that was.
I want to ask you if I can remember. I mean, I was really, really young. And she let me go because I went with older cousins and said it was good, it would be fine. And I went, and he was drumming. It was Genesis, and it was incredible.
Do you remember the album tour?
Yes, it was an album tour.
Do you remember which one it was? Which album it was?
Oh, boy, you'd have to go back. It was 80s.
Okay, so it might have been the Mama tour.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. I saw that tour, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, with Chester Thompson playing drums as well. And then Phil would get up during certain instrumental sections, and they, of course, did their famous drum duet together.
Right. And I remember that. And remember, he had, and for what I know about equipment, everybody listening is probably laughing, but I just remember it was huge. It seemed like it took up the whole back of the stage.
Between the two of them, because Chester had even a larger kit, and then Phil had his kit, which is a very good-sized kit, and just an amazing drummer. He was a huge influence on me, and for those of you that are watching, A, let us know where you're watching from. B, if you're a Dave Grohl or Phil Collins fan, or both, give us some little titles of some favorite works by either of those gentlemen. How about female drummers, Kate? Are you familiar with any female drummers out there?
Ooh, female drummers. That's tough for me. I was thinking about that, and you think I would know, but who was the drummer for the Go-Go's?
Oh, that was, brain fart. We'll chalk it up to senior moment. Gosh, it's funny. I want to say Belinda Carlisle, but of course she was not the drummer. But I saw Belinda at an event and asked her to say hi to... Someone help me out there. This is embarrassing. I'm so sorry that I can't think of her name.
I want to say Gina...
Gina Schock.
Gina Schock.
Yeah,
I met Gina Schock, and I remember I saw the Go-Go's a few times, and I met Belinda just in my career with a quick interview, and I remember talking to Gina too, and I was pretty impressed. I mean, she was somebody who went after it. I mean, that's how she described it to me. She went after it, learned new techniques, was always trying to do whatever. She was something. Yeah,
and this was back in the late 70s and into the 80s when it was even harder for female drummers then. You had the Go-Go's, you had the Bangles. There weren't a lot of female bands, let alone female drummers.
Yeah.
And now they're everywhere and flourishing, and could always do better, could always use more opportunities. So for you guys out there, share this to a female drummer if you know one, because this is going to be a very inspirational story. In fact, we'll get back to music in a moment. Let's start with Kate's story, which should be inspirational to everybody. It is to me, as is her new book, Deal Your Own Destiny. We'll have to get together again so you can sign this for me. But I've just got this, just started reading it. Kate, what was it like 550 rejections? Like after 20, were you starting to question it? Or what was the magic number that made you really fuel up and say, I am not giving up on this? And did you ever imagine you'd have to go through 550?
No, I never imagined it would be. I would be, be over 500 rejections. I didn't even think it'd be anywhere near that because
I didn't know there were that many opportunities to be rejected from.
Oh yeah, well think about it. I did television and radio and newspapers,
Right.
so I had a wide open canvas. So that how many television stations are there in the United States? A ton.
Oh,
With
yeah.
all the different affiliates and all the different cities and everything.
Right.
So I figured my odds were really good. Plus, I didn't think of myself as I'm limited by my gender. Oh my gosh, I'm probably going to get shut out. Oh, this is
Right.
going to be tough. I just thought, you know what? I'm passionate about this. People are telling me I'm really good. So I think I should be able to find a place to land. And I didn't expect and didn't think that I was going to be stopped because I was a woman. Especially, I didn't have any kind of chip on my shoulder. I was easygoing. I just figured if you have the goods and it's the right fit, I get it's subjective, but I would be able to find something.
Right.
So what would happen, Dan, is I kept getting, rejected. I wouldn't hear back from somebody. Somebody would even recommend me, but they weren't the gatekeeper. So I had lots of men that encouraged me. It wasn't
Good.
every man was shutting me down. It was that they weren't the gatekeepers. And finally, I got to like 369 because I would count them because it started to be ridiculous. And everybody was around me was trying to persuade me not to do this anymore.
Just to
like,
give
hey, you have a
up
great
and forget
voice,
about it.
you're a journalist. Don't, why do you need to do this? You could make a mint, you could do this, you could go to Chicago. You don't need to be doing this.
Right.
And that just made me more determined that, no, I want to do this. And when I got that letter, because it was a letter, it was 369. And in the letter, the guy said to me, and I talk about it in the book, the way the letter went, it was, "Dear Kate, you are attractive, your voice is good, da-da-da-da, but I fear you women do not belong in the locker room. They should not be covering sports, and women are more suited for easy, breezy talk shows." So morning shows, once I heard that, and obviously I knew he must have had a problem with women, or he was never going to let a woman in anyway.
And maybe also it could have been an age thing at that time. It could have been culturally his age, so old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Age
Sure.
on his part, not yours.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because I was, 20-something. And so I knew that I knew that there were more people that probably thought that way. So I was just going to keep going after it until I could finally get a break. And it was tough. It was tough because I knew that I could be doing something where I was making money. It's like musicians. You said it. You're struggling and people are saying, well, you have the sound, but everybody's a musician. There's a million great drummers. There's a million hard luck stories, because you always hear that.
Right.
There's a lot of discouragement, even with people that care about you.
Yeah.
And I just was determined, I'm going to do it no matter what. I'm not going to go to law school, or I'm not going to do something else. I'm going to go for it. And I just kept doing it until I finally got the break.
That's awesome. And for the people that are watching, whether they can apply this to their music career, or they're becoming architects or opening their own business as entrepreneurs or whatever, a couple questions on that 550 journey, I like to call it. One, who were your greatest supporters, if you had any? And two, what was it that really fueled you so much that you were not going to give up? Was it the passion for sports? Was it the passion for being a journalist? Or the passion to, F this noise, I'm a woman and that has nothing to do with it. I'm going to be a success at this. What was it?
I think, it's funny you mentioned the things that you just mentioned. It was a combination of all of them. And one, I really, really liked it. And I saw people that made a lot of money in jobs that they hated. And I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to deal my own destiny. I wanted to be happy no matter what, because I thought, boy, you only get that trite saying, hey, you only go around once, but it's true. And I kept seeing that over and over again. So I thought, this is what I want to do. I'm not going to be dissuaded until I finally, if it comes to that. But I never had a plan B. That was part of the secret. Because if I had a plan B, I had to feed my economic engine, but if I had a serious plan B, then I would have given up probably. But
Right.
I was determined I wasn't going to do that. But I knew it was going to be hard, that it was going to have to be somebody who was either more progressive, didn't care I was a woman, or thought it was great that I was a woman and I had a unique angle and I would probably get ratings because of it. And that's exactly what ended up happening. But I talk in my book about finding advocates and mentors. And I had a mentor, thank goodness, but I didn't have a lot of advocates because really my crew, the people around me, they were cheering for me, but they were really dissuading me. So I had to kind of even distance myself from some people eventually, which is really tough to do, especially for someone like me. But it was too depressing because they wanted me to do something else.
Yeah. You touched on, I think, one of the biggest elements, and that's the advocacy. And we have at least 2 or 3 different memes that we post on Drum Talk TV from time to time that shows different images of different drummers playing together and different things like that. But the message is surround yourself with people who support you 100%. Anything else is self-sabotage. And it's true. And sometimes when we're in the arts, we're doing something that's financially challenging or gender challenging like yourself and other women, it's hard to get that support. Even with Drum Talk TV, in the second year, I believe, even though we were having great success and everything, there was still an element where it was not bringing in a ton of money, and I was working 18, 20 hours a day, 11 days a week. And my wife, bless her heart, a couple of times I was like, maybe you should fire up I used to have a video production company before I started Drum Talk TV, doing marketing videos, training videos, product launch videos, things like that. And I had some really big clients. I worked with the Sydney to Hobart in Australia. I worked with Citibank, Wells Fargo, the Young's Foods Group. And as she's saying this, I had no plan B. Even though I was successful at that previously, that was not my plan B. I didn't want to work with big corporations in that capacity anymore. And I knew that if I even took some sort of part-time job, it would take away from the time and energy I had to put into Drum Talk TV, and it would just be like, might as well just disconnect that car from the train, because it was all or nothing. It was all or nothing, and it got a little rough a couple times, but she hung in there, and being an artist herself, she understands what it is to be an entrepreneur, and she supported me and hung in there, and eventually we hit a tipping point at about 2.5 years when we reached 500,000 followers just on Facebook alone, and now we have over 1 million, and it's just, things are different, but it takes that persistence, and you've got to surround yourself with people who support you. In fact, in Kate's book, folks, get the book, in Kate's book, one of my favorite chapter titles is on this subject, and it is not only come out swinging and believe in yourself, which is chapter 1, but chapter 2 is fire up your fan base, getting others to believe in you. It's so important. It was a big part of you getting through that, right?
Absolutely, because it was too tough. It's exactly what you said. Economically, it was challenging. It used to be the mindset was, well, if you have a degree and if you have a second degree and if you have this, how can you possibly not be using them? And what are they worth? Because we always try to put the value on that.
Right.
But I just was hanging in there. And in fact, in the beginning, I was single but seriously dating somebody, and he couldn't hang.
Oh.
He was, it seemed like we were going to go the distance, but he really couldn't hang with it. The entrepreneur idea, the idea that no matter what, I'm going through this wall. So that relationship ended. I used to make a joke that when I was dating, if you came to my place, it was in Pismo Beach, California, you'd love the view. But when you walked inside, it was like the wall of rejection, because I hung up all the rejection, because it fueled me like, oh, okay, here's number 20, here's number 30, and to me it was just funny, and I would look at it and it was motivating.
Yeah.
It was probably demotivating for people who were dating me. It's like, what is this?
Yeah, great social proof for dating someone.
Exactly. Like, what is all this rejection? And it's funny because, you talk about your wife and going through that, and of course, when you're an entrepreneur, you're always going to have those dips and those highs, no matter what.
Yeah.
And my husband now is fabulous. He's supportive. He's definitely 100% all in what I'm doing, and it's been great because I have the major advocate now.
That's great. I got to know, I meant to ask you this when we met. I don't think you brought it up at dinner, but who gave you the break, if we can call it that? Who opened the door for you and walked you in and said, it's yours?
Well, the very first break I got was from a guy named Roger Blameyer, and he used to be the VP of the Cincinnati Reds. And then he was also in basketball, so he had some good connections. But he bought a radio station in Santa Maria, California, Santa Maria, Santa Barbara area.
Yeah.
And I was filling in. I just had like this quick fill-in thing where somebody had me fill in and I was reading scores. And he got a hold of me and said, I want to hire you to do a sports talk show. And I thought, wow, I mean, I wasn't even thinking that way. I was looking at television. That's primarily where I was sending all of my work. Mm-hmm. And I had never done a sports talk show. So it took forever. And then finally the sale went through and he called me back up and I went to see him. And I said, what makes you think I can do a sports talk show? And how are people going to react to that? And he said, are you kidding? I think you could fill 6 hours, because he only wanted me to do 1 hour. So that was really one of the very first breaks that I got. And that was after that mark of the 500. And so there you go.
Wow.
Finally it happened. And it was him hearing me just by accident driving up from Southern California to Central California. And I just happened to be filling in. So it goes along with probably what many of you musicians know that are listening. When you're a drummer or whatever, that you never know who's in the club, who's in the audience, who is hearing you. So if you say to yourself, well, I'm not in a big stadium and I'm having an off day and I'm doing my best, but I'm not 100%. I never think I'm not giving 100% no matter what size the audience is or where I am, because I was on a small station. Right. But here he was the guy who was buying the station.
Yeah. Wow, that's such a great story. Beautiful part of the world, by the way. I mentioned I lived in Ventura, California for 15 years. Spent a lot of time going back and forth to Santa Barbara, up to Santa Maria and whatnot. Yeah, that's such great advice. So when we think about people who we've interviewed that have excellence in their area, so for me, the late, great, he just passed away yesterday. Oh. The late, great Hal Blaine, the most recorded drummer and probably one of the most recorded musicians in the world. When I think of Hal Blaine, when I think of Stuart Copeland, when I think of Carmine Appice, Nico McBrain, the list just goes on. And with you, I mean, Arnold Palmer, Emmett Smith, I mean, pretty much every big accomplished athlete ever, Michelle Carter. You don't want to catch a left hook from her, shot put record setter. What do you think, in your experience in talking with these people, what is the one or some of the common denominators, the elements that these people possess that get them to where they are? And for you musicians out there, I know you might be thinking, well, in some cases like Kate said, there's a million great drummers, there's a million great guitar players. Well, all that is true, and it's easy to say right place at right time. That might be true in getting a gig, but the hardest thing about getting any kind of gig is keeping it and staying on top. I heard a long time ago, the hardest act to follow is often your own, because you got to keep impressing, you got to keep bringing it, you got to keep improving. Kate, in your experience, what do you think people like we've been talking about possess?
Well, first of all, I think they definitely have the skill. There is some skill there. And they've honed it, so they never think they're good enough. They're always working on it. Like a great example is Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady's won 6 Super Bowls. What else does he have to prove? He's got the supermodel wife, which he just happens. He would say, I mean, he loves her. She happens to be supermodel, but every other person looks at it like, wow, what else do you want? Why does he need to keep playing? Because he has that burning desire to keep winning, to keep getting it right, to keep practicing, to keep keeping his body in the best shape possible. And especially athletes have that that desire to get the next trophy, the next win, the next whatever it is. And you see that great examples are Roger Federer, for example, in the tennis world, same thing, in his 30s, doesn't have to do this. Serena Williams, same thing. I'm giving you two tennis icons to take you in a different direction.
Yeah.
Emmitt Smith, who I've interviewed, I traveled with the Dallas Cowboys, and he was with the Cowboys, and they won 3 Super Bowls. He gets out of it. He can do whatever he wants. He's been a successful businessman. But then he goes on Dancing with the Stars, has to kill himself in those practices where he's doing it eventually at the end, 10, 11 hours a day. Why? Because he's competitive, because he has a desire to win, to be the best. And there is that competitive fire, I think, that you do have to have in the arts in general, but certainly in music, definitely in what I'm doing, definitely in the speaking world, definitely in the writing world, etc., that there has to be something that fuels you, that you're never quite there, you're never good enough. And if you think you're good enough, then that's when you start to slide down, because you're not honing your skills. There's always something else that you can learn or do a little bit better. And every athlete that I ever talked to always felt that way. Like, even if they hit the high level, then they were always looking for the next one. But it was a lot of practice, hours and hours and hours. And drummers, you know this, how often are you practicing? You might know it cold, but do you just say, you know what? I'm on the beach today. I'm having a couple Coronas, which of course you can do. But are you practicing at some point? Or do you say, no, wait till the gig. 4 days, I'm okay. Of course not. Why do you have all the practices leading up to it?
Right, exactly. And I believe that a very common factor amongst these people is discipline.
Yes.
The discipline to stay in shape, the discipline to stay healthy. I don't know, I'm hoping my fellow musicians are staying healthy, but the discipline to take care of ourselves. A lot of us, work a day job. I remember I had a day job, full-time job, and then I practiced 4 nights a week, and then gigged at least 1 or 2. And it adds up. It takes a toll on you. The discipline, like you said, to not fall into complacency. The discipline to constantly improve, constantly at least stay up to where you are, because once you stop practicing and working on the simple stuff like rudiments drummers, it can really, like you say, slide. So I think that discipline's a huge one. I can only imagine an elephant off of someone's back when they finally win a Super Bowl, especially if they've been with a team for a few years, but then to go on and want to win another, and then another, and then another, and I know there's a whole buzz associated with that and all of that, but the work that it takes is like starting all over again to get to the highest point that you possibly could in that sport, or that gig, or that genre of whatever it is that you do, your vertical market or your industry. If you look at it the wrong way, you could just get so exhausted about thinking about it that you just, I won one already. I got the ring, So it's interesting to see people, like you said, Brady and Smith, and just go after it over and over. And in my world, when I think of the musicians who are out there that are still bringing it every year with every other year, every 3 years, whatever, with a new album, a new tour. Nico McBrain with Iron Maiden, Stuart Copeland is still doing stuff. Carmine Appice is still out there touring. The guys in Yes, and it goes on, and Carl Palmer. I know that 80% of these people are not doing it because they need the money to pay the bills. It's because it's what they do and who they are. And every time I've seen these repeat offenders, in my eyes and ears, they just get better and better, and it's amazing to me that they work that hard in their 60s and 70s now.
Right. There's something about hitting that next level. And when you talk to musicians, they talk about that a lot. They know it when they found the groove, when they found the right melody, the right song, the right musicians for a road crew, for whatever they're doing. And they talk about that, and it's the same thing. It's that same feeling. And it's definitely that way with the athletes. There's no question. But even the people who run the teams. And I find that's the same thing with business people who are super, super successful. I mean, we live in a world now where entrepreneurism is flourishing. And how do you stay afloat, and how do you stay buzzed and keep doing what you have to do? You said it, you have to have that discipline, but you have to keep stretching. You're stretching for whatever's next. Because if you get complacent, that's when it gets dangerous, and somebody else will snap it right away from you.
Good point. Absolutely. Kate, talk about your wonderful book. And folks, the beginning of it is riddled with quotes and testimonials by people who are at the top of their peak and their position in their respective industries. So it's getting great praise. Give us a synopsis in your own words, rather than me reading it here, about the book, and perhaps touch on a couple points of your journey that are reflected in here that you believe people will get the most out of, whether they're musicians or want to open a pizza shop or whatever.
So I wrote the book because people kept asking me when I was speaking, how did you get here? How did you overcome that? Oh my gosh, I want to do what you did, but in my field. How do I do that? What can I do? And I realized I had this amazing content with the incredible people I've had access to in all worlds, and that I needed to share that. What were, as you mentioned, what did they have in common? And what did I learn from them that keeps helping me along the way as I continue to reach for the brass ring again and again and again? And that's why I wrote the book. So Deal Your Own Destiny is about not letting other people knock you off your journey of where you want to be, and realizing to do this, there's really 3 things that you have to focus on, and it's going all in. So committing to it. Don't worry about plan B, because if you're focused constantly on the net, you'll never make that leap.
Yeah.
So don't do that. I found that across the board with everybody. So going all in. It doesn't mean you don't feed the economic engine or have to do something part-time or whatever you have to do. Right. But you have to go all in, and you have to remember, and this is a thing, Dan, I think a lot of people forget, and I talk about this a lot in the book, patience pays. And you said it, look at all the rejections that I went through. I could have given up along the way, because the other part, of course, it took 5 years, over 5 years. So I lost time where I could have been doing something else and really crushing it maybe in some other field, but I didn't do that. So it is about patience. Malcolm Gladwell says it's 10,000 hours, or whatever it is, whether you believe Gladwell's theory and how he proves it, or some of what I found from these athletes, same thing. What did they put into it? How much work? And it's always a long timeline. There is no such thing really as an overnight success. And then stacking the deck. How do you stack the deck? So surrounding yourself with the advocates and getting rid of the people, frankly, in your life that are dragging you down, finding those mentors, getting in a mastermind, or having people that you can call, whatever form that takes for you. And in the book, I talk about my journey where I learned and I knew I didn't want to be a television anchor anymore. When it dawned on me, I covered these elections in Mexico, and it was the PRI and the Panista party, and I realized, I'm with an NBC crew and my own local crew from El Paso, and they're shooting at us because they're stuffing the ballot box. Maybe I don't want to be this globe-trotting person who's going around in these dangerous areas. So you also can weed out what you don't want to do, and I talk about that there. And I talk about also in the book the people that I've met, some of them superstars, names, household names you would know, or even names that would be interesting for you to know in the world of business and what they were able to accomplish.
Former presidents as well.
Right, former presidents. And so for them, same thing. Did they wake up and know I'm going to be the president? No, but they made steps toward that journey of what it was they cared about and what did they have that was unique or special to offer. And I think that is key for anybody. It's like Jordan Spieth, who is this American golfer who has torn it up at a very young age, winning a Masters. And whether he's in a slump or he comes out of a slump, he still is a national treasure, and who knows how many wins he ends up with of majors and when it's all said and done. And what was it that drove him? And it was, again, in the conversation, what I found out with him is that, you know what, you are determined, you're not getting knocked off of this, you have the skill set, and you get better, you tweak it, you do what you have to do to get there. So you also, and I talk about this in the book, you also can't be afraid of getting criticized or getting information, pulling it in from the right people that can help you get better as you're moving along to try to attain what it is you're trying to attain. Because if you become very stale and very direct in what you're doing, and this is the way it is, and you never take in other information, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because there's brilliant people who have been there who can help you along the way. Yes. And I talk about not being afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid. If somebody's big or who they are, you'd be surprised. The bigger the name, usually the more accessible. To write them an email, to reach out, to figure out how you can connect to them, and ask a couple of questions, and use that information, that valuable content, to hone what you're doing. And I found that with everybody that I talked to, including there's somebody I talked to that now is a speaker, but he's up for the Basketball Hall of Fame. His name is Mark Eaton. Mm-hmm. And Mark played for Salt Lake City. Yeah. And he played against Michael Jordan, and he's crushing it in the speaking world because he's got these great stories about playing with and against these incredible household names that we know. Yeah. And plenty of people know who Mark is, but he knows there's another level of people that he played with and against that everybody knows. And he was a mechanic. Yeah. And then he took advice from Wilt Chamberlain, who told him, you're big, you need to be down there and you need to be shooting and getting under the basket and putting it in. And he told him to block and told him what to do. And he took in that advice, and it helped him along the way. And then eventually, look, now he's on the doorstep of possibly, being in the NBA Hall of Fame. And it's pretty tough to get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and he should be. I grew up as a basketball fan, raised by my father that way. And I was so into basketball during those years when Mark Eaton's a big guy, even for a big guy.
Right.
The Mark Eaton and the Showtime years of the Lakers and the Lakers-Celtics rivalries and all of that, and of course the San Antonio championship runs, and I grew up just immersed in all of that, so I totally get that.
Yeah, well, let me stop you for a second. If you're a big basketball fan, and this was later, but I had a chance to interview Dr. J.
Oh, wow.
Boy, Dr. J, here's the other thing, cool and confident. There's a difference between arrogance and confidence. That guy is the most confident athlete I think I have ever met. Just knows.
That's
boom.
Great.
He knew he had it. He wasn't worried about it. He was going to do what he had to do, and he did it. Right?
That's great. Has there been, I'm sure hundreds, but has there been someone in particular that, whether it was advice or something they said during an interview with you, or something they said to you in discussion, friendly discussion off camera, that rang to you, resonated with you as just really great advice that ended up being part of your journey?
When I was sort of midway through, because I almost feel like I'm in this reinvention stage, it's sort of like the second tier. I think you get where if you're a person who's competitive, or you found your stride, or you made your turn like you did with Drum TV, you keep going. What's next? What's bigger? What can I offer? Oh, geez, this is exciting. I want to help people. What can I do? So while I made that second term, before I did that, I know Nate Newton, and he came out to see me when I was definitely an anomaly and the only woman on the air in Dallas, Texas, which was a big market. And all of a sudden I'm on the air and they're hearing this woman's voice at drive time. Mm-hmm. And he comes out to a remote where I was, and he told me, he said, you have it. Don't give up. Don't let these guys pull you down.
That's great.
Don't let that happen to you. And he would see me along the way and he'd say, you're the one, don't stop. And he's always said that to me anytime we've been around each other. And that was very encouraging, and it stuck in my head. Because he said, you're the one. You're the breakthrough woman. Wow. You get it. And I knew what he meant.
Yeah. The first thing I thought of is you being like the Karen Carpenter of broadcasting for women. Karen Carpenter just opened that door. And it still wasn't that easily opened, and then Sheila E., of course, just making it more and more acceptable for women to get really good gigs and be in bands and do session work and all the other things that come with it. And not just drummers, but other musicians as well. But I think for some reason, I believe that the most challenging instrument for women to break through with has been drums, because it's thought of as being so masculine, and it doesn't have to be. If you listen to the radio, you don't know if a man or a woman's playing drums unless you know who's playing drums.
Right. It's interesting you say that, because I've had friends in symphonies, and what they've done, there was so much prejudice against women in different symphonies. Conductors had their way, and so they put a screen up, and they would tell the women when they auditioned, this happens all over the world, to not wear heels. And then when you come into audition, let's say you're the cello, violin, whatever it is, they don't know what your sex is. They're just listening to music completely. They have no idea who you are. And the idea is then the best musicians get picked, and it's better for women because they were so male dominated that women who were super talented on these instruments really weren't getting picked for the Philadelphia Orchestra, Boston, in Italy, in Rome, and wherever. I mean, all over the world. So it's very common practice now to have that screen.
That's just crazy. In this day and age, that's just crazy.
Right, but you think about it. If you're a maestro and you're in your 60s, 70s, which I don't want to say that because I know plenty of men that would be encouraging to me that are older. But let's say if you went by the stereotype, then that's what they see. And they say even when you really try, there's certain biases we all grew up with or have, and maybe we're hammering it out of ourselves, but it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. So for this next question, I do not expect you, and I'm not asking you to give up a name, but have there been interviews where you walked away thinking, wow, that person's just not as nice as I thought they'd be, where that bubble bursted? And before you answer, I gotta say something, and I am not being biased towards my tribe, but after maybe 600 Drum Talk TV interviews, I have never been disappointed by a drummer where after an interview I thought, man, what a jerk. I've never felt that way. I think that drummers are just the coolest people. We've got some things in common. I've never met a drummer without a sense of humor. I've never met a drummer who doesn't want to kind of share techniques and hey, check out this new piece of gear I got, whereas there's other instrument communities where they don't do that. Guitar players turn around so you can't see how they're doing their lead. Guitar players throw a towel over their pedal board so you can't see what they're using. All kinds of crazy stuff like that, whereas drummers are just more communal and I think by nature more friendly. I've never been disappointed by somebody. How about you?
Well, that's such a great question, and because I've done so many interviews that I really feel that's my forte, and I make people feel comfortable, and they want to have a conversation with me, whether they're in the rarefied air of being a billionaire, like the guy behind Paul Mitchell products, or whether it's somebody who's a Hall of Fame athlete or a rookie or whatever it might be. So I've rarely had anything that disappointed me. I had a surprise once, and I'll tell you the story. I was filling a rain delay. The Rangers were playing the Yankees, and I did the post-game show, and I did a talk show when they weren't playing. So I would do my regular talk show. And there was, of course, this crazy rain delay. And I used to say the Rangers are just killing my social life because they will play unless there is mud dripping down from the top of the stadium. And we used to joke about that. So they throw to me, the play-by-play guys. Eric Nadel is very famous. He's in the Hall of Fame. He throws to me, and I start filling the time. I talk about the other teams and what the scores are and all that stuff. And my producer says in my earpiece, hey, I can get Pete Rose. Do you want Pete Rose to come on? because he'd be great. Talk to him about, anything in baseball, and he will talk to you about anything. He's awesome about that. So he came on. We talked about rules. We talked about what was happening in baseball. I mean, he's the hit king. Everybody knows his story, banished from baseball and that whole thing. Yeah. And then when we got to the end of it, they were saying in my ear then, okay, hey, rain delay's almost up. So I was going to say goodbye to him. We had a nice little chat. And I said, Pete, geez, thanks so much and good luck and whatever I said. And he said, wait a second. I have a question for you. And I said, okay, what's the question? And he said, who the hell are you and where are we on?
Oh, wow.
So he didn't, hey, I'm just radio girl. Who knows? They hand him the phone. But I always assume, hey, in my head, nobody's really listening. Well, Dan, and for everybody listening to this, everywhere I went, people would tap me on the shoulder. Hey, who the hell are you? Because I was recognizable. And so they were joking me. And it became this big joke. So much so that somebody put it on T-shirts. Who the hell is she? And it kind of took off a little bit. But that was probably one of the funniest things in a way that happened to me. That's just Pete being Pete, but he didn't remember my name or know where he was on.
And did you ever have an encounter with him afterwards? Like, did he realize the breadth of your career later or any of that?
No.
No?
No. And most really super, I'm talking, I have interviewed uber wealthy people, really time constrained people, movie stars, whatever. It's that so many people are pulling on them and they are in a different atmosphere, so to speak. You can't be insulted because most of the time they don't remember who you are.
Right. And like you said, someone handed them the phone. It might have been the 12th phone call.
Exactly. How many interviews do they do? If it's a press junket, unless you've really interviewed them a ton of times or somehow stuck with them, but that's, they don't remember.
Yeah. That's such a great point. That's a great story, too. Thanks for sharing that. Do you think Pete should be in the Hall of Fame?
I do think Pete should be in the Hall of Fame. Here's what I think.
I do, too.
The great Nolan Ryan, who I love and who would remember my name. He knows me. He's thrown 7 no-hitters. He's in the Hall of Fame. I was there when he got in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And, in fact, he was someone who remembered me. He said, where have you been? Ruth and I have been looking for you. I'm like, are you kidding? You have the New York Times all over you and all these people. And he's just such a good person. His son now is involved in the Houston Astros. But anyway, So I asked him that question. I said, should Pete be in the Hall of Fame? And he said, absolutely. He said he was Charlie Hustle, the king of the hit king, but he should not be involved in baseball. He should never be able to manage, touch it, be anywhere near it. He should not be involved. But for his accomplishments,
on the merit of his playing and his skills,
just on the plane, right? Yeah. But not, and I agree with him. Not anywhere near it in any other sense, but on just his accomplishments, he should be in the Hall of Fame.
I appreciate you sharing these stories. One bit of advice that came across in an interview I did is probably the simplest 3 things, yet they're so important that Chris Slade had to mention them. And Chris Slade goes way back to playing with Tom Jones when he was 18, 19, 20. He played with Manfred Mann for years. He played with one that I can't remember, but one of my favorite stories is told by him when he got a call from David Gilmour to join him on his solo tour back in the 80s. And he said, yeah, I'll take it. Got the gig. It's a 9-month tour. Went to the pub, celebrated, came home, the phone rang, and it was Jimmy Page invited him to play with the Firm, with Paul Rogers and Tony Franklin. He said, I just took a tour with David Gilmour. And Jimmy said, how long is the tour then? He said, 9 months. He said, okay, we'll wait for you. And they waited for him.
No.
It's an amazing story. That's kind of the short version of it. But when I asked Chris, you've played with from Tom Jones to Jimmy Page, David Gilmour, all these amazing art. AC/DC he's back with. He's been with them for you. What advice do you have And again, it's so simple, but it's so heavy and so brilliant. He says, you got to show up. He said what you said. You got to have skill. You got to be good. You got to show up sober, and you got to like people. And I loved that last one the most because for me, again, it goes back to drummers. We were in Vegas at the time. We've only been in Arizona 2.5 years. He started Drum Talk TV in Las Vegas, and he came to the house with his wife to do the interview and hung out. And he's this drummer that I've admired for years and years and years. And then there's a few, like, my job sometimes seems very, I don't want to say I take it for granted, but I don't get starstruck easy. You know, I heard from someone a long time ago, treat rock stars like people and people like rock stars. But there's a handful of people who I have followed my whole life as a drummer. I'm about to turn 56. I've been playing since right before I turned 7. And there's certain people that I've just forever have followed. And Chris was one of those people where I was peeking out the curtain. Oh, he's pulling up. He said, wow, that's a small car. I didn't imagine. I thought Chris was like this real tall guy. He's like my height, and I'm short. I'm like, I used to be 5'8" when I had hair. I think I'm like 5'7" now. And before all the kids and the grandkids and everything. And Ian Pace was another one who he's my biggest living influence, him and Phil Collins. And the first time I interviewed him, I was actually nervous. And I don't get nervous about anything. I just don't get nervous. But I showed up at his hotel room with the cameraman, and I saw the light shift in the people. And he opened the door, and as soon as I saw his face and he held out his hand, hey, Dan, how you doing? It all went away. And then my wife met him, and we spent some time with him, and she calls both him and Danny Seraphin from the original drummer from Chicago, she calls them both Mr. Kind Eyes because they melt that stuff away. And I think that speaks to people just being themselves. I also heard quite a while ago someone say money doesn't change people. It enables people to be more of who they are. And I really think that comes through when we meet these icons, you know, these sports icons, these music icons, and you're getting the real deal because that's who they are. With or without the fame or the money, that's who they are. And I thankfully have never been disappointed by interviewing someone and walking away going, that just felt icky. That's not who I thought he was or she was. I never have felt that way.
Yeah, me too. I feel lucky about that. But I have that same philosophy that you have, that people are people, and, you know, I think we should have great experiences, and that's what I'm angling for. I'm not trying to be a fly in anyone's ointment or vice versa. And right. I think that comes across. How you are and how you carry yourself is key.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as interviewers, our jobs, that part of our job is also the same as being a great sports coach or a great music producer, and that is to bring the most out of your artist, the most out of your athlete, and the most out of your guests. And we do that by making them comfortable and just keeping it real, you know?
I agree. I think the more real it is and the less combative, unless there's a reason for that, but that's a different kind of interview, then that's what people want to see. And there's, right now in the world, I feel like the authenticity, that's almost an overused word, but it's true. I think people are craving authenticity. That's why we see what's happened in social media and how it's boom, like we're doing this live, and how you do it and how the setup is. And how it used to be, there had to kind of have a more set up kind of event and that kind of thing. And now we just roll with it, and it's great because you really get to, I think, the essence of people.
I agree, and I think that all of that was born out of guerrilla media back in the day.
Yes.
And I think today that's still the best. This is still when it's organic and it's natural. And, you know, I didn't send you a list of questions I was going to ask you. You didn't ask me what I was going to ask you. And I never work with notes. I just want it to be, and I tell the people, the other correspondents, I say, first of all, you don't need to try to be me. One is more than enough. Be yourself. That's why I chose you. That's number one. Dress how you want to dress, as long as it doesn't look like it's dirty or needs to be ironed. And most importantly, number three, don't use a list or a clipboard. Make it a conversation. It's not an interrogation. And just like when we meet somebody at a social event, let it just be natural. It's the same thing. You know, we're just having a conversation.
Right. I agree. The better the conversation, the more it flows like that, first of all, the more interesting it is, instead of having a list of questions, because that's when nobody's paying attention. Because then if you're interviewing, you're looking at the question and then they know what it is. And so
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a quick peek at the comments and see. I think this is while we were talking about winning the Super Bowl. Ashish, one of our super fans who's in Nepal, says drumming is easier. I think he's right, too. Yeah, sorry about the echo in the beginning, everybody. People citing other work by Phil Collins. That's great. Cool. We got people from all over watching. That's awesome. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. And Kate, thank you so much for bringing your experience to everybody through this wonderful book. Everybody, whether you're in sports, whether you're in music, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a salesperson at a car dealership, no matter what you do, deal your own destiny. Learn from Kate's success and her challenges on getting there. And Kate, thank you so much for taking time to be with me today on Drum Talk TV and kind of sharing the different commonalities and elements between musicians and athletes and team sports and being in a band and a symphony and everything else that goes with it. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
It was thrilling to be here, and keep at it, all the people that are listening that are drummers, because you got to be better than me, right?
and Kate,
I'm a fan.
Kate, it's part of your heritage. So on St. Patrick's Day, you got to tune in to Drum Talk TV's Facebook page. We're posting nothing but Irish and Celtic drumming all day long, and Celtic music and lots of fun stuff like that, honoring the music of that culture. So please tune in. And yeah, it's going to be great. And thank you, everybody. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to tell you one thing. Yeah. For everybody listening, you might be Game of Thrones fans. I'm going to Ireland the 1st of April through the 8th.
Oh,
and I'm going to tour all of the sites of Game of Thrones and the Irish music. They're going to take me down through all the Irish pubs and stuff where some of the musicians are playing.
Nice.
So I'll get a dose of that, and you guys will get me ready for it, and boom, there I go.
Absolutely. That's great. Can't wait to see that. Hopefully you'll make some clips.
I will.
Awesome. And thank you, everybody, so much for following what we do here on Drum Talk TV. I want to thank Gil Cervantes, our associate producer, for keeping everything, well, pretty much everything, not me, on track. And thanks, everyone, so much. And we will see you soon. We got lots of other interviews this month. And Kate, hang on the line. I'll be right back with you. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. Oops, almost hit the wrong button and launched a missile.